Then now Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Sessions, hello.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse.
When we met, I told you that I was going to ask you a particular question, so I'm going to lead off with that particular question. Following the Gonzalez scandals at the Department of Justice, the department adopted procedures governing communications between the White House and the Department of Justice, consistent with constraints that were outlined years ago in correspondence between Senator Hatch and the Reno Justice Department, limiting contacts between a very small number of officials at the White House and a very small number of officials at the Department of Justice. Will you honor and maintain those procedures at the Department of Justice?
I will, Senator Whitehouse. You, as an honorable and effective United States Attorney yourself, know how that works and why it's important. Attorney General McCasey issued a firm and
very clear about supporting that policy. Yes,
maybe still pending, and I would say to you, well, that's the appropriate way to do it. I read after you and I talked, I've read the Reno memorandum, the Gorelick memorandum, and I think I would maintain those rules.
On the subject of honorable prosecutions, when is it appropriate for a prosecutor to disclose derogatory investigative information about a subject who was not charged?
That's a very dangerous thing, and it's a pretty broad question as you've asked it, but you need to be very careful about that, and there are certain rules, like grand jury rules, that are very significant.
And isn't it also true that it is customary practice, because of the concern about the improper release of derogatory investigative information, that the department customarily limits its factual assertions even after an individual has been charged to the facts that were charged in the information or the indictment?
I believe that's correct, yes. That's a standard operating policy in most offices. There may be some exceptions, but I think that's standard operating procedure in the United States Attorney's offices like you and I had.
As a question of law, does waterboarding constitute torture?
Well, there was a dispute about that when we had the torture definition in our law. The Department of Justice memorandum concluded it did not necessarily prohibit that, but Congress has taken an action now that makes it absolutely improper and illegal to use waterboarding or any other form of torture in the United States by our military and by all our other departments and agencies.
Consistent with the wishes of the United States military.
They have been supportive of that, and in fact, I just take a moment to defend the military. The military
You don't need
never
to defend them from me. I'm all for our military.
But so many people, truly believe, think that the military conducted waterboarding. They never conducted any waterboarding. That was by intelligence agencies. Their rules were maintained. I used to teach the Geneva Conventions and the rules of warfare as an Army reservist to my personnel, and the military did not do that.
And General Petraeus sent a military-wide letter disavowing the value of torture, as we both know. Another question as a matter of law. Is fraudulent speech protected by the First Amendment?
Well, fraudulent speech, if it amounts to an attempt to obtain a thing of value for the person the fraudulent speech is directed,
which is an element of fraud.
Absolutely fraud and can be prosecuted. And I think we see too much of that. We see these phone calls at night to elderly people. We see mailings go out that seem to me to be awfully far from truth and seducing people to probably make unwise decisions.
So fraudulent corporate speech would also not be protected by the First Amendment?
That is correct, and it's subject to civil and or criminal complaint.
And speaking of civil complaints, was the Department of Justice wrong when it brought and won the civil RICO action against the tobacco industry?
Well, Senator, they won those cases. They took them to court and eventually won a monumental victory. That is correct, and it's
Hard to say they
part of
were
the law and firmly established.
Hard to say they were wrong if they won, right?
That's correct.
As you know, the United States has retaliated against Russia for its interference with the 2016 elections. In Europe, Baltic states, Germany, and Italy have raised concerns of Russia meddling in their country's elections. I know this has been touched on before, but I want to make sure it's clear. Will the Department of Justice and the FBI under your administration be allowed to continue to investigate the Russian connection, even if it leads to the Trump campaign and Trump interests and associates? And can you assure us that in any conflict between the political interests of the president and the interests of justice, you will follow the interests of justice, even if your duties require the investigation and even prosecution of the president, his family, and associates?
Well, Senator Whitehouse, if there are laws violated and they can be prosecuted, then of course you'll have to handle that in an appropriate way. I would say that the problem may turn out to be, as in the Chinese hacking of our hundreds of thousands of, maybe millions of records, it has to be handled at a political level. And I do think it's appropriate for a nation who feels that they've been hacked and that information has been improperly used to retaliate against those actions. It's just
And I know we share a common interest in advancing the cybersecurity of this nation, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on that. Let me ask you a factual question. During the course of this boisterous political campaign, did you ever chant, "Lock her up"?
No, I did not. I don't think. I heard it in rallies and so forth, sometimes I think humorously done, but it was a matter that I have said a few things, a special prosecutor. I favored that. I think that probably is one of the reasons I believe that I should not make any decision about any such case.
And you understand that the good guy lawman in the movies is the one who sits on the jailhouse porch and doesn't let the mob in.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm from Rhode Island, as you know, Senator. We have NAACP and ACLU members who've heard you call their organization, who've heard that you called their organizations un-American. We have a vibrant Dominican community who look at Big Papi, David Ortiz, swinging his bat for the Red Sox and wonder why you said, quote, "Almost no one coming from the Dominican Republic to the United States is coming here because they have a provable skill that would benefit us." I represent a lot of Latinos who worry about modern-day Palmer raids breaking up parents from their kids, and Muslims who worry about so-called patrols of Muslim homes and neighborhoods. And I've heard from police chiefs who worry that you, as Attorney General, will disrupt law enforcement priorities that they have set out and disrupt the community relations that they have worked hard over years of community engagement to achieve. Time is short, but I noticed that in your prepared remarks, these are not unforeseeable concerns, and your prepared remarks did very little to allay the concerns of those people. Is there anything you'd like to add now in our closing minute?
Well, thank you. My comment about the NAACP arose from a discussion that I had where I expressed concern about their statements that were favoring, as I saw it, Sandinista efforts and communist guerrilla efforts in Central America. And so I said they could be perceived as un-American and weaken their moral authority to achieve the great things they had been accomplishing in integration and moving forward for reconciliation throughout the country. And I believe that clearly. And I never said and accused them of that. Number two,
So what would you
with
tell
regard,
Jim Vincent of the NAACP in Rhode Island right now? He's the head of the NAACP.
well, I would say, please look at what I've said about that and how that came about. And it was not in that context. It was not correct. I said in 1986 that NAACP represents one of the greatest forces for reconciliation and racial advancement of any entity in the country, probably number one. That's what I said then. I believed it, and I believe it now. And it's an organization that has done tremendous good for us. With regard to the Dominican Republic, I had gone on a codel with Senator Specter. We came through the Dominican Republic. We visited public service housing projects that seemed to be working and did other things of that nature. And I went and spent some time with the consular official there just to ask him about things. And what I learned was that there's a good bit of fraud in it, and he was somewhat discouraged in his ability he felt to do his job. And we also understood and discussed that the immigration flow is not on a basis of skills. The immigration flow from almost all of our countries, frankly, is based on family connection and other visas rather than a skilled-based program more like Canada has today. And that's all I intended to be saying there. Tell anybody that heard that statement, please don't see that as a diminishment or a criticism of the people of the Dominican Republic. It was designed to just discuss, in my remarks, the reality of our immigration system today. I'd like to see it more skill-based, and I think that would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, my time's expired. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse.